we are going to get right started. And so my name is Christy Venable, and I am the CEO of Smile Therapy Services. Thank you for joining in on our live, our monthly live that we're doing. As you all know, we are bringing you all things mental health. And so this month, we have a special conversation, and we are going to be focused on all things men's mental health. And so we're super excited to have our guests with us today, and they will introduce themselves shortly. And I am going to introduce our facilitator for the hour. And his name is Chris Cartledge, and he is one of my esteemed therapists at Smile Therapy Services. And so I am going to jump off. And actually, I'm going to bring our other guests on, but I'm going to jump off and I am going to let the men take it over and have their conversation. So make sure you guys are engaged, send them some positive thoughts and comments, and get into this conversation. All right, so Chris, you are up.
Awesome. Thank you for welcoming everybody. Christy, my name is Chris Cartledge here, a master social worker, licensed graduate social worker in the DMV. Here to bring a very incredible and amazing panel here for today for this men's mental health group. We have some awesome panelists here joining us for this event exclusively for the men here, right? We're in Men's Mental Health Month, and this is an opportunity to engage with some incredible clinicians in this area, to get some knowledge, to get some feedback, to engage your questions that you might have lingering, and just be able to have this conversation space. We want this to be a laid back conversation space for you to just feel comfortable asking questions. We want to get your feedback. Drop your comments in there. Today, let us know how you're doing. If you just throw a comment in there, just say, fine, I'm doing all right, I'm doing great. Throw your comments in there so we know you're here with us. So we're going to jump right in. So I have a background in working with the homelessness in the Washington, D.C. area, doing mental health counseling work, and also doing specific therapy work. So I want to have our panelists be able to introduce themselves, so you understand what kind of people, what kind of caliber of men that you have here with you today to answer your questions. So I'm going to toss it right now to Mr. Lambers Fisher.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the introduction. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lambers Fisher, licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been doing therapy for about 20 years now in the various different environments, whether it be for-profit, nonprofit, faith-based, corporate, whatever the case may be, in different environments over the past 20 years, primarily focusing on couples, but also individuals and adolescents as well. And for the past 7 years, I've had the pleasure of providing multicultural awareness and diversity trainings to mental health professionals specifically, but also to business professionals, nonprofits, faith leaders, things like that, all in efforts to broaden their reach and meet needs of people, no matter what their cultural similarities and differences are. So I like to bring in different examples, not only from my own personal therapeutic experiences serving thousands of couples and individuals over the years, but also in those that I've gathered from other professionals in this field as well. So hopefully I can bring in examples that can help broaden this conversation on men's mental health specifically.
Awesome experience there. I want to jump right to Mr. Howard. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Orrin Howard. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been at this practice for over 25 years. I am a Howard graduate. I'm a Bison, HU, for those who know. And so I have worked in every field of social work with the exception of gerontology. So I have served as the director of school mental health for a school system. I created programs within the community. Right now, currently, I have my own private practice, and I've been an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work for the last 14 years.
Awesome. Thank you both for your introductions. We have a very experienced panel here to provide some more insight for this men's mental health workshop conversation that we're having right here. And the importance of having this conversation is that there's an opportunity to gain more impact in this world. There's an opportunity to affect change in this world. And the only way to affect change has to begin with us. We have to be able to have growth within ourselves. We have to be able to start with us in order to affect our greater community, our families, our neighborhoods, the world in general. We have to be able to be in a space where we can challenge ourselves to grow. We can challenge each other to grow and become better. So this is just one of the opportunities, and I'm glad we're here today to have this space to be able to create this growth bubble in this conversation today. So we're going to jump right into our questions for today for Men's Mental Health Month. So we're going to start with Lambers. What does men's mental health mean to you, and why does it differ from mental health in a general sense?
That's a good question. As it relates to mental health in the general sense, I'll start there as a comparison. I usually try to have a broader view outside of just one particular thing. So I have a goal of balanced self-care, self-awareness individually, as well as in relation to others. And this may include healthy decision-making, emotion management, behavior management, in line with what your goals and values are, just that overall effort of managing your interactions with the rest of the world. As it relates to men's mental health, there are unique challenges that are correlated with the different unique experiences men have that are different than everybody else. And so it's not to say that there's a unique mind and it's just this different, completely different, totally different brain, as opposed to how we experience the world is different, how we cope is different, what needs and expectations there are. There are similarities and differences, and learning to manage that is partly the challenge. And it's hard to say how we're different without understanding both. So that's why I say individually as well as in relation to others. And if we can have that balance, then we can take that in the home, in our workplace, in our community, and say, okay, how am I dealing with this? How am I coping as general coping should be? But also as a man, how am I trying to be whatever I identify as being a man means? Because finding meaning is a challenge. What does it mean to be a man to me versus to you, to somebody else? And am I living consistent with that? Am I living consistent with that in comparison with others' expectations of me are, and how much I want to let that influence me or not? And how am I helping others around me do the same thing? So it's an ongoing self-management in a variety of different ways in a healthy way.
Awesome, awesome. Well, one of the thoughts that comes to mind with that is one of the things you mentioned was expectations of what we feel is of what a man should do or how a man should be. Oren, what do you think about that expectation as it relates to men kind of seeking mental health or understanding mental health?
Well, one of the things that I think about gender and being a man is that it's kind of a social construct. It is something that, you know, we were all socialized to do. If you know the history and studying of some of the famous studies like Baby Q, where they tried to study a child from a gender neutral position and how difficult the world responded to that situation. And, you know, as the world is evolving, there's still social norms and expectations that men continue to have to address. There's a lot of work that's being done around it, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done. One of the things, the question starts off by saying, what does it mean to me specifically? Even in my family, and I want to extrapolate what it means to have mental health, mental wellness in the African-American community, in the African-American male community. I was taught that, you know, one of my cousins went to a party. There was some LSD or something in the punch, and that's how he started acting up. And then other relatives was deemed crazy and things like that. There is a direct lineage and correlation between how that kind of minimizing of mental health and some of the issues in some of the social and legal policies that African-American men in particular in these countries have had to operate around that influences mental health. So mental health is essential, especially in the African-American community, to bring out, address, confront, and acknowledge. And mental wellness is essential too, especially in the times that we live in. So I hope I answered your question, Chris.
Yes, definitely. And that brings up a very good point that the family environment and the cultural traditions and history of and knowledge around mental health is so important to understand. In order to do better and be better, we have to backtrack and be able to process our own generational understandings and those things those knowledge bases that have been pushed out there through generations in order for us to grow and be better. And that kind of goes forward to our second question. What are the good, the bad, and the ugly myths that you've heard around men's mental health? And before we answer, thoughts that come to mind when we talk about some of the good, bad, and the ugly myths are, oh well, my cousin that went to that party, right? He just started acting up. Like maybe there could have been something else going on, that where that person needed some assistance with their mental health and wellness, right?
Yeah, definitely. He had schizophrenia. Let's be clear. And so, because of the onset, this party happened when he's roughly around 18. And anybody that studies mental health knows the onset of those diagnoses come in your teenage years, your early adult years, in terms of when we officially diagnose. So, yeah, there is that. The good is that, wow, how resilient are we? How resilient are we as men, as African American men, that even without the knowledge, even without the background, we were still able to move forward and do the things despite policy and law, and so some of the good is that a lot of the resilience and inner strength of men and people in general have come from the fact that despite what they didn't know, they felt differently. They felt like they needed to move forward and things like that. Some of the bad is that a lot of the myths develop policies and practices that we subscribe to. One, I'm certified in effective Black parenting. One myth that about corporal punishment and the impact of corporal punishment. Well, that there's lineage to Black codes that supports why people went to corporal punishment, because there was a consequence, and during Black codes and things like that, if your child was perceived as acting out. And so, we're talking about some of the bad. We're talking about policies that kept men out of the house and still challenge men in homes that affect their wellness, their definition, their purpose. We're talking about some of the other bad is that people aren't getting the help that they need. They're acting out and not clear as to why. And some of the hope that I have is that I am seeing a trend where people are starting to acknowledge that it is mental health. And you see it professionally in sports, you see it in the media, and now you're seeing it in the community where people are able to acknowledge that this is a real thing.
Yeah, one of the things that gets built upon acknowledging that it is a real thing, which is a big hurdle to get over. You so nicely describe that, is once you put it in that category, is that even still accepted? Once you acknowledge that it is mental health, now you have to say, and that's okay. It's normal. It's okay if you tie that into being a real man myth. A real man doesn't have mental health struggles.
Right.
A strong man doesn't have mental health struggles. And that needs to be knocked down and say that's a normal part of any struggle, of any person's life. And so when you have that strong man, that confident, that secure, that any type of picture that is anti-mental health, then it is contributing to the difficulty of overcoming those challenges, of managing those mental health struggles. And so to get to the point of having a acceptance of, just like you can get stressed and it's okay.
He got stuck. But one of the things why he's coming back is that I just wanted to add that the number one killer of Black men is stress, as manifested through heart disease, diabetes, and all the other things, violence and things like that. And so I think that the need and the priority gets magnified, especially during times like this where there's just more than one pandemic. There was the pandemic of COVID, and there's also the pandemic of racial reconciliation in this country. There's also how we're moving backwards in time in this country in terms of policies and things like that, and how that affects the Black man or men in general, shall we speak. So I think that question is just a magnificent question for all of us to think about, is that yes, we are resilient. In the same breath, there's so much more work we have to do.
Yes, I completely agree. We are only at the tip of the iceberg in the journey of the growth that we need to accomplish. Some of the comments that are coming in, men can only express anger and not other emotions. Woo, that's a big one right there. Men should be able to control their feelings in men, right? So some of the myths that get spread around some of the younger youth is that men expressing their feelings and emotions make them weak.
Yeah,
I can't cry in front of another guy. Come on, bro, right? So how can we combat that type of myth with some of the younger youth?
Well, part of the challenge is seeing it modeled in a healthy way. to be able to see someone who you already can emulate in other ways to follow after, and then that person who can also show it's okay to have feelings, a variety of feelings. Feelings don't have to be associated with negativity, with weaknesses. I can feel that, and it's a sign of how much I care. It's a sign of how strong that I am. It's a sign of how aware I am, and it actually helps me to meet a greater variety of needs. Not just it's okay for me to do something that's bad, but it is a good thing. It shows how mature that I am. It shows other skills and other things that help me be a better person, alone a better man. If we learn to reframe those in a healthier way, it can have the chance to say, oh, somebody who I trust, somebody who I can see doing things that I want to do says it's okay. And then a whole new generation says, oh, now I can see a different way, as opposed to just social media memes, laughing at somebody who's crying, the latest sports celebrity or music artist who they're saying, oh, look at this guy crying. We change the language and how we respond to it. That would be a great start.
Yeah, I
Yes,
just want to add on what Brother Fisher was saying, but we have to become cycle breakers, and it starts with us. And
Yes.
so one of the things that I say is that not only do we have to encourage modeling it in families, but we have to model it in ourselves. How well do we take care of ourselves? Even the helpers,
Yes.
even I'm looking at us three, how well do we take care of ourselves? One of the things that I always say when I train new clinicians in the field is that if you're not in therapy, then we have a problem, because you're not modeling the very thing that you're going to spend a lot of time trying to help men and other people try and get connected to in their own lives. And so that's an ongoing process, because, you know, we're not encouraged to do that. We're encouraged to fall on the sword. And by falling, we're encouraged to be John Henry. And you know, by working ourselves to death or working ourselves to the point that we can't move forward, is all part of the script that we have to break. And it's a multi-generational script, you know. And so you have to become a cycle breaker, which takes a lot of courage, but it can be done.
Yes.
And a lot of times that advocacy piece comes in with just inserting subtle changes in conversations. It may not be a big speech, a teaching lesson, but when you hear somebody say, "Can you believe this?" Yeah, actually I can. They must be out of their mind, or they might be struggling with something you can't see. Just those little subtle things that you can insert into a conversation and make sure it doesn't go off the deep end. Anybody watching this, anybody listening, professional or not, can be a part of changing those conversations across the dinner table, one conversation at a time, in a client situation, in a school. Change those conversations so it's not everybody piling on and it going down a rabbit hole, as opposed to you being the one to help somebody else say, oh, I never thought about it like that. And then they can go into the next person they see and not be so sure that it's the same thing. They can just judge easily and say, oh, maybe it's what I heard the other day. And we can plant those seeds to healthier ways of thinking about things.
Yes, definitely. And speaking to planting those seeds and being cycle breakers out here in the here and now, why is there a need for men to specifically focus on their mental health right now?
We're in a crisis state. Men in particular, and I'm going to specify men of color, are under attack in a lot of different ways. And mental health or mental wellness is a priority, just like physical health. And, you know, so we have to, the one word that's true about both is health. And so can you have physical health without mental health? No, you can't have good physical health without some good mental health. You can start, but you need to emphasize it. And so I think that the challenge that we have in front of us is that we've always known it's been important. How we address it is the need for change right now. What we did in the past doesn't work now with new information. So some of the things that we hear about, you know, in the work is, oh, just swallow it, man up, do what you got to do to get through it, work harder. Some of those things we've seen over time. We have enough evidence to support that doesn't improve your mental health, you know. And so acknowledging it, learning how to release it, learning how to de-stress, learning how to be present. Those are things that make it important for men in particular to address some of their mental wellness. And you'll see me use the words interchangeably because I want to say where we're going. And so I pick out wellness as opposed to health, and that's where it is.
Yes.
No, that describes it quite well. And I like a comparison with physical health, because a lot of times we can acknowledge that that's something that needs to be managed. I mean, it's not so easy to say, well, hey, if I just have willpower, if I just hope to be physically healthy, then I'll just be in my tip-top shape. It's like, no, we have to intentionally exercise in a certain way to maintain. We have to intentionally eat in a certain way to maintain. Nobody judges, oh, you one of those eat healthy people. Wow. It's like, well, no, you're trying to live your best life. The same way we are intentional about our physical health, we need to be intentional about our mental health. Because to a certain degree, as life stressors, as environmental stressors beyond the pandemic, social justice stressors, family stressor, children, spouses, partners, whatever, as stresses increase, our need to manage our mental health increases. Because if we don't, then we'll slip up and express ourselves in a way that doesn't quite represent our values and our goals. But because we didn't manage it, then we have to do damage control and pick up, and then the implications get bigger. And so we need to intentionally manage our mental health. Not only if it's a problem, I'll do that. No, manage it so that it doesn't become a problem, because we're overall managing our physical, our mental health. And like, I love how you said it, our mental wellness as an ongoing state. Nicely put.
And
Yes.
absolutely, you can't smoke your mental health back. You can't drink your mental health back. You can't have sex to your mental health wellness. See, those are things that we did to try and help us. You can't eat your way back into mental health. Those are things that we do as people to try and anesthetize the pain and try and avoid the work that needs to be done for mental health. When we talk about cycle breaking and what men have to do to break cycles, they basically have to go in, like the movie, I forget, Higher Learning, it ended, unlearn. They have to unlearn things in order to get to a space where they can confront it and actually grow.
Definitely. And some of the key words that I'm hearing from all the gems that this panel is dropping is increasing the awareness of what we need to change, taking intentional action to create that change. Just two of the key words that I'm hearing just stand out so prominently, just so far in what we're speaking about. And one of the questions is kind of related to what we're talking about right now, from Sharice Matheson, is as a woman, how can she encourage men to speak up and ask for help, and as it relates to seeing her son, who is 14 right now?
Powerful. Knowledge is power. Knowledge and awareness is power. So I commend you for even asking the question, because that brings us to a presence. It has to be built in every day in life. That's how we begin to work. Like we do in other things, like your son is in school. That's mandatory that they go to school. It's mandatory that we work on mental health. And you could do that a lot of different ways. I like to gear it towards the personality of the actual person to address it and attack it from that angle, but it's a whole body experience. Mental health is a whole body experience. What you eat matters. That contributes to some people feeling sluggish and slow and not themselves. What you drink matters. Sugar is an addiction just like any other drug. So it's how you guys as a family unit can attack that for your 14-year-old son, and then trying to surround him when there's opportunity with other older men that can mentor, and organizations that take on that, or churches, or anything else that you value in your family. I think is the way to do it.
Yeah, no, that's a good way, a holistic way of seeing it. I also highlight the contrast, well, not the contrast, the follow-up to unlearning. If we acknowledge that there was a certain unhealthy pattern that was learned, society, home, individual, whatever the case may be, unlearning something unhealthy and then learning something new. If we acknowledge that sometimes what's being asked by genuine, caring people, and if you're talking about the question said the women in somebody's life trying to help, acknowledging that what's being asked isn't as easy as it seems. Just tell me how you're feeling. Just tell me what you're thinking. No, for you, it may be a just, but to that person, you're asking them to do something they need to learn how to do from scratch. So it may require some modeling in that kind of way. It may be different, but to say, okay, I'm going to start off, then you piggyback, or help increase the emotional vocabulary, for example. It's like, okay, well, just, oh, you're always fine. You know what that means, right? Like, that may be their only emotional vocabulary, but if you help give some things to start off with, they can take it and run with it and pleasantly surprise you with their capacity. But that flexibility, that acceptance of what they give, and inviting them, not pressuring, not judging, but inviting them and making it a safe place. And when they do give you, nurture it. Wow, praise the heck out of it. That's amazing. I look forward to the next time. And they're like, oh, this this feelings thing is not only okay, but it actually helps. Well, I want to do that again. You encourage it, and then you could be pleasantly surprised by what you see.
And one other thing, Mom, do as I say that is not as effective as do as I model. So you got to model it. You got to get good rest. You got to be able to do mental health awareness and breaks and things like that. So I just wanted to add that piece as well.
Yes, definitely. Dr. John C. Turner says, us men definitely need to continually work on our mental health because we've been told how weak it made us. Look for doing so for way too long. We are stronger with strong mental practices and with helping others do so as well. Very nicely put, Dr. Turner. Definitely.
Well said. Well said.
Definitely.
Indeed.
And that actually rolls right into our next kind of segment where we're going. What interventions or strategies can men put in place to improve their mental health, Lambers?
Well, when I think of strategies, I get to go to a usual default of goal setting, things that are consistent with the stereotypical kind of men, actionable type of things. But then I start there and I build upon it. If I find somebody who is very logic oriented, very decision making goal things, I start there and say, okay, so you have a goal professionally, you have a goal personally, be a better husband, be a better father while doing things like that. You don't have to scrap that. That's some stereotypical thing. You're falling into a certain pattern. Build off of it. In addition to providing, how are you meeting their physical needs? How are you meeting your family's emotional needs? Oh, I never thought about that. That's a goal you can put right next to it. They need you in these ways. They need you relationally as well. They need you to expand that. Oh, well, if I incorporate that into a framework I already understand, then we can build upon personal and professional goals, relational and emotional management goals, just as much as the other ones. And it won't be so much of a learn to be somebody you're not. It's how can I find a version of that to expand from where I'm already at, and that way you have a higher likelihood of.
And I would say, from a holistic standpoint, one of the first things I do with my male clients is we got to look at your team. We got to get your team straight. It's hard to do the work for mental health and mental wellness if the people around you are not accountable to their own. And so you have to really begin to look at your environment, look at your space, look at what you breathe, what you eat, what you smell, how you sleep, how you live, how you're spending your time, and start to break it down in a way that you can take them one at a time to improve your mental wellness, just 1% each day. 1% better each day until you get to a space where you are in control of your mental wellness to the point where you'll tweak as you feel the presence of what you need to do. And I think that's a fundamental process, because a lot of times people get into processes where they say, oh yeah, I'm working on my mental health, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And then as soon as they finish, they go back into environments that take it away. And so what I'm saying is, like, everybody around you right now cannot be around for your mental health growth and wellness, unless you're one of the fortunate ones where everybody's on the same page and accountability is great. And that's kind of tricky because some of the people around us are around us by blood. And so we have to be intentional about who we're spending our time with, who we surround ourselves with. We have to be intentional about our total body wellness. You can't work on mental health and just consume and gorge, eat, and drink a whole bunch of alcohol and think you're going to be able to sustain it. So that some of the initiatives to that starts with looking at your environment, to me.
So
yeah, I love it. Say again.
So in checking your team, Oren, how does someone who's moving towards their mental health and wellness journey, how do they process making those, I guess, boundaries for their team and their environment? How do they start to move in that direction?
Sure. I teach clinicians this, and I do this with clients. It's called an eco map. If you take a circle and put all the things around you that are important to you, all the people, you put your name in the middle, and you put whatever your friend, let me say Fisher, I put Chris in one circle and things like that. The question I ask is, when you think about your relationship with Chris, is it positive, negative, or both? Right? The thing I asked about Fisher is when he thinks about you, the way he views you, is it positive, negative, or both? And then after you do this kind of assessment, this kind of needs assessment, then you look at, do you have a lot of negative relationships? where you don't see them positive and they don't see you positive? And what's the purpose of them remaining in your life, right? You know, do you have a lot of mixed relationships? Out of those mixed relationships, how are you diverting your energy? Are you spending a lot of time trying to fix a mixed relationship? Is that the best use of your time? And so it's a needs assessment. It's a needs assessment like you would do when you take a new job or interview for a job. It's a needs assessment that you would do when you're dating a beautiful person. It's a needs assessment that you do constantly that I'll bring out to look at your team. And then afterwards, there's some acknowledgement. Well, this person, that's my mom. She's never going to go. Okay, that's fine. So then that means we have to change the relationship expectations. We have to change the dynamics of that. And that's what we start to focus on. What is a realistic expectation when this is negative and you can only control your side of it? You know, and those are some of the things that we do in that work so that people can really start to do a real needs assessment of who they're surrounding themselves with. And it's not just who, it's things too. So I had people who had church as their own entity, exercise as their own entity. It's how you're perceiving the world and how you're responding to it and how it's responding to you that matters.
Got it.
Yeah. The best empowerment addition to that is acknowledging the risks when you do that, because I'm a big fan of boundaries, and it is essential in order to make that growth. You have to figure out who's in and who's out. And it's not necessarily always all in, all out. Like how you say, you have to determine the quality of that relationship, how much you're going to have. Sometimes you'd be partially in, but I determine my expectations. That's great. The implication then is sometimes people are going to have to go.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. And so when you bring that up initially, so it won't be a shocker to them later, you help them prepare for it. Sometimes you may feel like you only have a few friends. You don't have as many as you want. And once you really look back at it, that's a great assessment. That's a great evaluation. They may be offering more negative than positive. And you have to consider the possibility it may be better for you to not have any of them.
Yeah, so people have seasons. So they may have been great when you were 15 and 17, but at 30, not so much anymore. You've evolved.
That's hard.
Yeah, and they may not have evolved in the same direction. No disrespect to them, but you got to move forward.
Of course not.
Right,
and that's the key part. The whole part is what's again?
It's all about that growth and being able to assess where you are on your journey of growth and what people can come along on that ride of your journey for where you are. So it's one of the questions that popped up from our audience is that, so how would someone speak to a man about this topic who has not had the modeling as a child around mental health and wellness?
So this is for Miss, I think that's Devin Mitchell, if I can see the name. And so what I would say is that the very question implies the empathy that's needed to ask it. Hey, listen, I don't know how to speak to you about this. I don't have all the answers, but how are you? How are you managing? This is what I'm seeing. This is what I learned. This is, it's the empathy that we have. People have to be open to change. We study the level of readiness somebody's in change. If they're in a pre-contemplation stage or a stage in which they're not really ready to make the move, then the question changes and shifts a little bit to how can I get somebody ready to be open to this discussion?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're ready for the discussion with empathy and the kind of intuitive and the nature of your question that you ask, that's to me the opening that you take to get somebody when it seems like they didn't have the resources to start with.
Yes, using that empathy. Lambert, you had feedback or addition?
Yeah, I also like to consider that sometimes what seems like opposition is really just lack of awareness. Sometimes you can say, well, if you're choosing this, you must be judging everybody who doesn't. You're choosing the unhealthy route, or that's the only option they see. And you may be the one to introduce to them. But just say, hey, how are you doing? It's like, I'm doing okay, as well as can be expected. Had you ever considered this other possibility? No, I didn't even know that was possible. What would that look like? You may be the one to flesh that out, not only to help them get a vision for what it could look like, but then also to help them figure out what steps they can take to move forward. But we have to acknowledge that sometimes you may be the one to present them. If they haven't seen it, like they hadn't seen it modeled, let them know there is another way, a healthy way. They can still opt out. They can still say no, but you can still present to them. There are other ways you can feel. There are other ways you can act. There's other ways you can be. And the choice is still yours. I just want to make sure you knew your options. And if you ever want to find out more about that, come let me know. It's still an open invitation, but it's presenting a new possibility, a new healthier way that they may then choose to pursue on their own.
Yes, yes. All in how you present it and presenting it with empathy. Yes,
Exactly.
very nice, gentlemen. So and moving forward, so we talked about men's mental health. We talked about some of the myths and stigmas that go along with that. We talked about the need and why we have to be able to break these to be these cycle breakers and to bring this attention and intentional activity. So how do men actually find these resources or clinicians like yourself to help them actually improve their mental health and wellness?
You want to go?
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
say simply, it's a process, right? It's a lifestyle change. It's not just a moment or an event. So what you're going to do is you're going to begin at the beginning of any process and start gathering information, gathering resources, doing some insightful stuff. Do you need, like, some people come to me in therapy? I have a lot of female clients because they have issues they need to work out with men, and they figure, let me pick a male therapist. So having that insight is important. For men, it is the acknowledgement of, this is a process. This is not an event. I just told a client that was traveling to Chicago, just as my very own therapist said it to me previously a week ago. They said restoration is not an event. It's a process. And so you have to build a restoration process in. So restoration looks like, what do you need to do to educate yourself about mental health and awareness? Like, do you
Yes.
need somebody who's an expert in that? What do you need to do to get breaks during your day? Like, do you get up and walk during lunch if you're at home working? Or what do you do to exercise your mind? Like, what do you do to exercise your body? What is it that you're doing to improve your overall health, but specifically mental health? If you don't know, you start asking around. You start looking. If you're looking for an African-American therapist, you can go to Psychology Today. Is there African-American therapist? Whatever jurisdiction you're in, that you can look up and see. If you have insurance, if you're fortunate enough to have insurance, you go through your insurance and say, hey, I'm looking for this. Is there any way, if you study the technique and you said, oh, I want somebody who can do this technique, then you start going to the National Association of that technique. You might ask some of your people that yeah, I go to a therapist. My therapist is this person. A lot is a direct referral. I didn't want to eat them all up, Fish, so I'll let you jump in.
No, you described the referral angle quite well and gave some good leads. I'm sure some folks are taking notes. As a broader picture as well, I like to remind people that help can come from a lot of different sources. It doesn't always have to be, even though I'm a therapist, help doesn't only have to come from therapy. And so when you think of that evaluation, the circles and the broader circles, you can find mental health supportive people in your home, family and friends, a social group environment, church environment, community group, or professional. It's almost like that physical health analogy we used a few times today. I can do a few things, doing some push-ups at home, doing it myself. Maybe then I upgrade to a workout DVD or YouTube video. Then maybe, you know what? Doing it with a friend at home helps me get more results. Then I may need a personal trainer. Depending on what level of needs you have in any given day, you might need different things. It won't be the same thing all the time. But if we're open to that, then it won't always be, well, I don't have insurance and I don't have any local therapists. It's like, that's just one kind of help. There's a lot of different kinds of ways you can get encouraged, you can get support, you can get validation, you can get a listening ear. And if we broaden that scope, then all the things you listed, that is a lot, but it's not limited to that. And so if you can do the research, great. In the meantime, there's still probably options closer than you think to just get somebody who's willing to pour into you. You get the comparison of who in you is putting in positive at its basic level. Who is pouring into you, giving some type of affirmation of what you're doing well, of what you can, somebody you can trust, who's giving you some ideas of what you can do differently. Who's doing that, and then you can build upon that. So there's a lot more options than we may think around us if we seek them out.
And I wanted to add, a lot of work that I do with clients is attack all your senses. What you listen to matters. The type of music. Does that music inspire you? Does it make you angry? Does it bring you down? Like, slight adjustments like that can make a world of difference. What you see. Do you watch news all the time? Do you get anxious after you watch the news? Do you have inspirational shows that help you to think about life better? Or, what you taste, like what you feel? All those things matter in terms of beginning the process of mental wellness.
Yes, dropping some serious gems here, as we have moved along through this conversation here, and being able to attack the senses is a major one. I'm gonna hold on to that one, and I hope some of our audience is holding on to that as well. And bringing us down to one of our last questions here. What message would each of you give to the men here in this audience about mental health?
Well, as a broader perspective, I bring it all the way down to learning who you are, accepting who you are, and encouraging others to do the same. As we already described, we're all different in different ways. We all have different strengths. We all have different needs. And as we learn that, if we don't learn ourselves, we can't accept ourselves. If we don't accept ourselves, then unhealthiness is going to be rampant. But if we learn to say, okay, regardless of what society says I'm supposed to be, what past what elders or other people in my community say I'm supposed to be, who am I? Let me start there. And if I embrace me, then maybe somebody else might actually be pleasantly surprised. That's not what we're used to, but the way you do it, that don't sound that bad. And you might be able to own who you are and find a healthy version even as you grow. But if we learn who we are, accept who we are, and then encourage others to do that around us, and we can mutually benefit each other, and then we'll be pleasantly surprised by what we see in ourselves outside of seeking a specific expectation. I have to look this way. I'm supposed to look this way. All those expectation things. Learn who you are, accept who you are, and then grow and see what happens.
Very well
The
put.
thing that resonates with me is you are enough. You have within you the resilience to overcome anything you will it to be. But there's certain things you have to recognize about the world that we live in that I think it was the great author Khalil Gibran in The Prophet that talked about good and bad being married. You wouldn't understand the concepts of them if you didn't experience both of them. And so some of the things that I've translated in the work that I did and in my own life, some of the best experiences, the things that felt the best to you turned out to be an awful decision. And some of the things that came out of pain turned out to be a life-changing event. Once you accept, like Brother Fisher said, once you accept who you are and accept some of the things that occur in life, they're just challenges. You never get to judge the story by the middle of the story. You can only judge it by the end. And so when you're going through life and you don't know if you're at the end. This could be the middle. This could be the breaking event that really changes your path. And so embrace it. Embrace your resilience. Understand that you have enough in you and recognize that your pain, unfortunately, is not unique, even though it feels unique. And so others have done it. Our ancestors have done it, and they still came. We're here because of them. And you be the next generation of ancestors that are here because of it.
Nice.
Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. The thought that comes to my mind when we talk about mental health for men specifically is because we have a long history of avoiding our emotions and feelings, avoiding our mental health, but focusing on going to the gym, taking care of other priorities as far as providing for our families, but not taking care of our own minds and bodies. We have to think about it like our bones. When a bone breaks and we go to the doctor sets that bone, says rest up, eat well, nourish that body so that the body can heal itself.
Yes.
And we have to take that same approach with our minds to understand that the broken parts of our minds are the parts that heal to be the strongest. When we feed them appropriately, when we nourish them, when we nourish our minds appropriately and efficiently, those parts of our mind will heal and be the strongest parts of ourselves. So we have to be able to break past that cycle of avoiding our emotions and feelings and our optimum mental health and focus on healing by getting that help, getting that education, intentional action, being cycle breakers, and overall just being able to step one foot in front of the other on this journey so that you can reach your outcome, you can reach your end goal, and then look back and see like, wow, where would I have been if I had not just taken that first step? So
Well said.
Take that first step, gentlemen.
Well said.
We have some comments here. I'm going to go back. Dr. Turner, We as men definitely have to realize that not everyone can go to glory with you. So to be your best and live your best life, in many cases, that journey won't have a ton of people at the end of the journey with you. Helping yourself won't always be received well by others who will leave you because you are choosing what's best for your life. That is actually a huge help to your mental health more than we realize.
So I just wanted to add to Dr. Turner's point that one of the things that I always promote is selfishness in its definition gets a bad rap. I'm saying be the best version of yourself, and you can be a better husband, you can be a better son, you can be a better sibling, you can be a better employee because you're giving to yourself. And by giving to yourself and by prioritizing your needs, I'm not saying ignore others. I'm just saying by making it a priority, then what happens is you give the better version of who you are. And I just think that, we just have to keep that in mind in our journey as well.
Yeah, it's a common trap to fall into, that if we're sacrificial, one part of being a man, as one of those definitions, is sacrificial. Okay, I'll sacrifice everything. It's like, that's good, but you have to have enough to continue to give, because if we don't, then the consequences of that might spill over. If we don't manage our emotions and then we accidentally let it out in an unhealthy way, and then try to explain it away and justify it. If we manage ourselves, we can avoid that. We can manage our well-being. So that selfishness that sounds like it is really self-care that allows us to continue to offer the us, the true us that we want to give to other people. So yes, in order to do our best for others, we need to do our best for ourselves, and it's a nice little cycle that can continue on. So yeah, that is great.
Woo, man, we got some serious knowledge being dropped here today. I hope everyone is taking notes as we're moving through these questions and these topics, and it's gaining some information, gaining some motivation to either start or restart or continue your journey towards mental health. Another one of the comments that we have here from Hope Dickerson Gilchrist: familiar equals safety. A lot of times, because necessarily healthy, but necessarily healthy. So moving feels scary, but probably definitely the healthiest option. Mental health is health. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. She makes a great point.
Yes,
I was
Yeah,
going
a
to.
lot of times, as we talked about earlier, pursuing healthier mental health or wellness, as Owen talked about, is, how people say, I'm the first one in my college, in my family to go to college. We can say that nice. It sounds cliche-ish, but monumental when it happens. We can say that same thing. I'm the first one in my family to pursue mental health, mental wellness. It could be completely outside of it, and that's a scary thing. Just as scary as going to college, leaving the home for the first time. You're doing something that hasn't been modeled, may not be supported. Oh, you think you're better than us? No, I'm just trying to pursue healthy. And hopefully it'll be contagious. You'll see how good that looks on me, and you'll want some of that too. I'm not trying to be better than. I want to offer something. I want to offer something to my kids that you didn't offer me. And I'm not saying it as a judgment. I'm saying you offered me a lot. I want to build upon that and offer something in addition. So keep all the respect, keep all the value, even for the people who you value most, family and friends. But then to do something new, it is scary because it's not the familiar. You don't know what it's going to look like, but it is so worth it. And hopefully, if you do it in a healthy way, true health and wellness, it'll be something that when you bring it back, it doesn't have to be the threats that it may seem like, because it's unfamiliar to other people. You can do something that's healthy, and other people say, oh, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't see that done, but I like how you did it. How did you do that exactly? Maybe I want to incorporate that, and it can be contagious within your household, within your extended family, within your friend group. It can be scary, but still worth it.
Yes, scary, but still worth it. I like that. I like that. So as we're winding down here, I want to open up the comments for any other questions, any other comments that we have from our audience today. Go ahead and throw your comments or questions into the chat there so we can get them answered. Any questions that we are not able to get to today that you still have, you can definitely reach out to us and get those questions answered, as far as resources, interventions, questions you have about being able to reach someone in your life that you want to be that cycle breaker for them to begin their journey. We can make sure we get you information and just point you in a good direction to help or be that impactful person.
In reference to what Hope said, I just wanted to add that let's reframe fear. You know, she's absolutely right. Mental health is health. And reframing fear and making it so that fear is not a wall that you have to figure out whether or not you should just sit there or try and get around. Fear is a flag, a warning sign, something that causes you to pay more closer attention as you pursue beyond it.
Yes, yes. Fear is just a warning sign. Our bodies are wired, are chemically are chemically wired to be a safety system for ourselves. So anything outside of our comfort zone automatically triggers a flag and tells us like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not where we normally are. You need to go back, but you have to fight that instinct in order to create that growth for yourself.
Exactly. One other thing that I think about as it relates to mental health, especially men's mental health, is the fact that it looks different. Healthy looks different for everybody. If we keep that trend for this conversation going, physical health, one person's physical healthiness might be completely different than somebody else's physical healthiness. No. If you were healthy, you would be this size. You would be this shape. You would be this weight. No. That's your healthy. My healthy looks different. And if we're honest about that, then we can acknowledge that there's a variety of what healthy looks like. Same thing with mental health. Well, a true mental wellness looks like this temperament, looks like this vocabulary. It's like, no, you do you, I do me, and we're all trying to find our own version of healthy, and we're open to that looking differently for everybody. That way we don't have to pursue the exact temperament, the exact same attitude, exact same language as somebody else. That's healthy. Okay, we all have to be like him. No, you, again, learn you, accept you, and find your own version of healthiness. And if it really is healthy, it'll show. If you're lying to yourself and then trying to get other people to believe it, then that'll show as well. But if you're trying to pursue healthy in your own version of what that looks like, then we can all accept a lot of variety of things and really appreciate that and continue to be encouraging of each other.
Definitely, definitely. We have one final question here. What can employers do to help with men's mental health?
Well, I see the superstar Christy asked that question, so I got to answer that in a real formal way. She is super impressive, and what she does is just phenomenal. So thank you for what you do for men as an employee, as a provider. In terms of employees and employers, one of the things, and when I consult with agencies, that I really try and emphasize is that you come in and you do a needs assessment of what you got already and where the shortcomings and where the strengths are within your agency. You put together a team and you look at your policies. Do they support your employees? In particular, do they support the diversity of your employees, like the men, and other things as well? And then the second thing becomes to create space and opportunity. Allow your employees to be part of the decision-making tree. Allow them to design things that would support their needs and things like that. Because there's still some things like when men take leave and it's perception, or if men are going through something, sometimes employers, not Christy, but sometimes employers look at that as not favorable and things like that. So making sure that we're looking within each fabric of our programming to support men's bringing in supports for men on your team is something else that's helpful in closing the gap. Creating opportunities is like one of the biggest things for your men on your team to define what they need.
Yeah, one thing on that last note about defining what they need, I think of flexibility. One word that just translates it all. How flexible is my organization? If I'm thinking from the employee side, is my organization flexible enough such that if I need to express myself in a way that's not convenient, it's okay. I don't have to worry about hiding in order to protect my job. So a lot of times tragedies happen, social justice tragedies, or in one's family, a loss. I mean, sometimes it can be that much of a contrast where one person says, well, whether it be something that's devastating the world versus I lost my family. Can I be imperfect coming into work tomorrow, or be a little bit late coming into work, or not? And know that the first question that will be asked is, how are you doing? Is everything okay? As opposed to, well, you need to fix that, or else maybe you're in the wrong place. Are you flexible enough to say, hey, I'm not at my best. I'm working on me. But is there any flexibility if I need time off, if I need space from this project, from this meeting? If I need that, if I acknowledge it's a legitimate mental health challenge that I'm working on, if I acknowledge I'm working on it, do I have the space, or is that a threat to my employment here? If there's flexibility, then a lot of things can happen on top of that.
Yes, creating space for flexibility from employers. So we have had a lot of information today, a lot of resources, a lot of just impactful, just cycle breaking knowledge passed on from Lambers Fisher and Oren Howard today. We thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on this panel. We want to respect everyone's time as we are out of time for today. But I do want to make sure if you have any questions or you want to follow up, please reach out to us, info@smiletherapyservices.com. You can also follow up, put your information in the chat, and we will make sure we get back to any questions that you have. Again, thank you for attending here with us today, and we hope to see you at the next mental health and wellness broadcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.